Hey, good morning, Professor Tootle. We took the longest time off in 5 years that we've ever taken off. I think we missed 3 weeks in a row. Oh God, am I having
Yeah,
bandwidth
yeah.
problem again? Can you hear me? Okay, well you just looked at me. You didn't, did you say anything?
You were kind of cutting in and out, but it caught up. So,
All right. Well, so what's the deal, man? I've missed you.
well, I was just sick. That's all.
Oh, okay. All right. So we don't need to get into those details in a public
Yeah.
show. So Professor, I have a couple premises that I'd like to wind together in an hour-ish today. And I really want your wisdom on this. So, anything that you can do to help me help others, and maybe anybody that listens to the show can, add their own values in. I created this little PPPPP principles, policies, parties, politics, and personality in order. I think it's important to think first principles, then what kind of policies, then a party. Do you have a club? I don't necessarily mean GOP and Dem, but those are the two big ones. But is there some club that's associated with those first principles, then policies, and then politics? Okay, how do you make sure your club wins over the other club, whether it's either carrying your own banner or shooting their banner down? And then finally, personality. And I know we're all humans, so we always gravitate towards the personality almost first, but I kind of think that should be last. I mean, maybe that's a technique that helps accomplish the principles or get your policies done, or maybe make your club great, or maybe somebody who's really a great salesperson who's, advocating your own tribe or your policies, or like diminishing the other side because they're so great at ripping their ideas down. So anyway, do you have a gut reaction? Does that kind of make some
But did you
sense?
say principles first and then party?
No, principles,
Okay.
policies,
Policy.
then party, a club advocating first principles, then policy, then party, a club,
Then politics.
then politics, how you get all that done, and then finally personality. Personality is important. I have one, you have one. We like people, we don't like people, but I don't think it's the most important. I think it's actually the least important. And maybe when Washington comes around again or Lincoln comes around again, maybe that reorders it some. But I
Hmm.
still think the reason we liked Washington and Lincoln is because they had principles, and then their policies were good, and then they had a tribe, a party. They didn't have a political party, but a team that was doing something meaningful of principles. And so anyway, that's just kind of I
Yeah.
put that off the top of my head. Can you give
I
me a
mean,
reaction to it?
yeah, the first reaction is that it's it it I find it to be an interesting exercise because in some ways um you're trying to you've managed to almost reverse engineer what our founders were trying to get rid of in decision making. In other words, the way human beings actually are,
Yeah,
first thing we care about is personality. And when we were back at AEI and listening to Arthur Brooks,
yeah.
he he taught us about how quickly we make our judgments based on do we like this person's personality, and then how confirmation bias follows that, and then we want to group together with these people, and then after we're part of this group and feeling like we belong, then we're more likely to be open to the policies, and then we will are more likely to adapt our principles to these things we're already doing. And what our founders said is we need to stop that about because
Wow.
that's how human beings actually are. So what we need to do is in Federalist One, Hamilton said we need to decide the important question whether or not human beings can be governed from uh, thought and reflection and choice, delaying all of those things so that we use our principles and then build policy from principles, and then the coalition creates a party, and then you engage in the peaceful negotiation between these things. And then, of
Mhm.
course, then the personalities come to represent them, and then you put them up for a vote. So, in a way, I mean, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but it seems like you've managed to walk us through, um, walk us through the underlying principles of the Federalist
I had.
Constitution.
So, Professor, I did not do that on purpose. Now, maybe. maybe I've done it through osmosis for conversations with you over 150 shows over 5 years, that it kind of, because some of that is yours, principles and policy, and then, but it occurred to me, it seems like I'm just watching my friends on Facebook and I've been in a lot of personal meetings recently on politics, and it seems like we're just kind of off. We're talking about the wrong thing. And so I'm trying to figure out, why do we talk about the wrong thing? And I get it, we're human. Somebody's pretty or somebody's strong or somebody's dangerous, and we react to that. I get that. I'm not trying to take away the humanness of us at all. It just seems like it's not the most important thing. It
Right.
seems like we should kind of figure out, well, what's this all about? And part of it, a month or two ago, you gave this really interesting treatise in our conversation, and it was about, I was trying to ask you, like, what's really important, or where's power from, and you
Hmm.
went right to religion, and not in a sanctimonious preaching kind of way. It's just like, there's a lot of people that this question is irrelevant. They if you want to talk power, hey, politics has no power over it. I mean, it was a really interesting treatise you gave, and I thought it was not revolutionary. But it does allow us to think through people, and some people march to their own drum and are in a different level of different playing field, and that's probably why they're kind of centered. They know what's important. They don't have to react to every little crisis of the day.
That's where, and I think part of that has been for me influenced by so many of the black intellectuals of the late 19th, early 20th century, because they were so focused on maintaining their own identity and not letting someone else define who they are, because they were swimming in racism. In fact, Clarence Thomas just gave a speech on the anniversary of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And if
I
you
saw you post that, but I hadn't read it. You think it really is worthy
Yeah,
to
I
read?
really think it's worth reading, and it deserves a lot of very close attention. But in that speech, he describes his own family experience, and even though his grandfather was illiterate, he still knew how important it was to maintain his own identity based on equality of all human beings, the, and the principles of the Declaration. In some ways, it was more obvious to him why you wouldn't want your identity or your rights to come from government, because he was surrounded by a government that were
Yeah, it wasn't very kind.
actively discriminating against him.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, is that the reason you were posting some thoughts on Frederick Douglass? You kind of had a small series of them in a row.
Well,
Uh,
I just think that one of the things, because we're so obsessed with race, we tend to think about those thinkers only in the sense of their contributions to race. We kind of put them in a box and we say, oh, well, we want to hear what a black man says, so let's go find a black guy, right? And I'm telling you that their contributions to political thought should be considered outside of and independent of, the fact that they happen to have black skin. That we should be honoring their contributions to political thought and really taking their ideas seriously, not just trotting them out when we need a black guy. Like, think about what they're actually saying. You know,
so
consider them in the grand political tradition. Like, don't just say that this has something to do with race. Like, really think about the implications of their ideas.
So it doesn't have to be directly. You don't have to paraphrase Frederick Douglass. It can be in theory or in theme. Um, I'm on a theme that Americans should do really well this year, and I don't necessarily mean economically. I just mean we should be good citizens. It's our 250th year. It's kind of nice to have milestones. I like 10 and 50 and 100. And 250 is so enormous that we shouldn't just raise our flag and eat a hot dog this 4th of July. We should kind of be better citizens. We should rise to a higher calling. We should see what it's all about. So I'm trying to read more, study more, talk to people more, advocate more, plead, cajole, inspire people to be a great citizen in 2026. Now, having said that, that's my theme this year. What is the theme of Frederick Douglass in where we are in 2026? What can we learn from his treatises, from his philosophy, from his ideas?
Well, this is I just two things that just immediately pop into my head. First of all, growth. That there is no, you know, um, that as long as you're alive and taking in breath, you can continue to learn and grow and evolve. And Frederick Douglass had a long life, and I think too, again, on my own sort of pet peeve is people will trot out one particular thing he said at one particular moment and say, this is what Frederick Douglass thought. And he said, well, Frederick Douglass continued to evolve on most of these issues. So I think it's important to read all of Frederick Douglass, not just, I mean, yeah, start with a snapshot, start with a quote or something, but keep going because it's this journey that you get to go on. Um, and it, it is also something that should lead you to a sense of gratitude. Sometimes you read, for me, it's also James Weldon Johnson or Calvin Coolidge, and I can't help but just feel grateful that they did so much hard work and that I get to read this stuff and benefit from it. That I always say I'm not a smart person. I just read what smart people have written and I repeat it, and it makes me sound smart. But how wonderful it is that we get to benefit from the learning of others, you know. And Douglas is certainly an exemplar of that. The other thing is. Specifically about the 250th is something that one of my students said in class, which is, hey, you're over 50 and it's only been 250 years. So think about the American experience and you've been around for X percentage of this time. And I think it uh, helps us to think about this stuff, that the last Civil War pension the United States paid was in 2020.
Saw that.
And it wasn't because her father, it wasn't because her grandfather or great grandfather or great great grandfather. That means that the last person whose father fought in the Civil War died in 2020.
Right. He was a young man and she was an old lady.
Yeah, and we, for most of us, I mean, we will be blessed to have a long life, hopefully, and and you get to be a part of this great experiment in self-government. What a blessing it is. If we truly understood how precious our lives were, and if we truly understood how much has already been done on our behalf, um, you can't you would greet every single person you meet in life as a brother and just you would walk into every store and say, "Can you believe we get to be alive together today?" That if you had that kind of context, you would have that kind of gratitude and happiness with every single person you meet. But you can't. It's overwhelming.
Right. Well, so Professor, it's a nice presentation you're giving on optimism, hope, and confidence, and joy and wonder. It's wonderful. I've missed though how that was Frederick Douglass.
Related to Frederick Douglass, that Frederick Douglass never stopped working, and that his intellectual output stretched over his entire lifetime, and that he never stopped grappling with the eternal issues of what does it mean to be free? What are my duties? What are my responsibilities? How do I act? And what's the right thing to do at this moment? Which is something that we all are grappling with in real time. I mean, I saw you reposted something that our friend Derek Katzum wrote
That's
about.
actually the topic of our show today. I
Okay,
was
yeah, the political
just
pain
into that.
scale,
Yeah.
uh, and every person, um, every who isn't distracted by their phones, uh, should always be saying like, how do I balance this day? Work, work for money, uh, service, rest, paying attention to your spiritual life, your physical life, every day
Important loved
is.
ones,
Yeah,
friends.
what books? My Tom Brasino just sent me this book. This just came in the mail yesterday, Communism and the Conscience of the West, and I'm like, oh, I start reading it and find myself like, next thing you know, I'm 50 pages into it, but then I think, oh, I probably also need to pull weeds in the backyard. This is something that we always struggle with, and if when you um, when you study somebody like a Frederick Douglass who had a long life um, or I'll say like a John Quincy Adams, somebody like somebody who had a long life, who never stopped thinking about what's the right thing to do. Um,
Benjamin
and
Franklin.
yeah, we get to and we can well, I don't know if I put Franklin quite in the cover. He was a randy old fella, but
Oh yeah, that's part of him, Professor. That he also
he did
had
live
a
a long time, but and he did put some thought into it. But I guess he landed a little more on the pleasure side of the equation than
okay, fair enough. But he
than
also
John
didn't.
Quincy Adams.
Okay, yeah, but he lived more than his fair share in that life. Let's say
That
that.
is true. Yes, that is true. But that's also good. We are supposed to enjoy our lives.
Well, didn't
And
they create a national holiday in France when he died? I mean, he was obviously more than just a randy guy.
no, no, no. But you know, the, I, I don't think we're meant to live miserable lives of unhappiness.
Okay.
That's not what we're because we are capable of joy. I think that means that we're supposed to have it.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Well, I made my point on him. Back to Douglas. Growth and what meaning is, the meaning of life and citizenship. So those are the two main things of his that
well,
you reflect on often.
also, I guess the thing that I find useful is that he never stopped grappling with the implications of the founding. He understood. Um, he understood that the principles of the Declaration, that's what you need to grapple with. Um, that's the heart of the matter. He agreed with, Lincoln's sort of formulation that that's what gives people hope, and that that this principle of liberty to all, that was what the people he called the worthies, you know, the founders managed to hit upon, that was so important to always focus on. And so this kind of constant application of the founding principles to the problems of today, uh, over a long period of time, I would say that that might be the main thing.
Okay.
And I also like his use of metaphor. I mean, another thing he was very good at as an effective speaker was and maybe because I like doing this too, which is if somebody's struggling to come up to understand an abstract concept, he would bust out a metaphor to explain the principle, and you find yourself going, "Oh, okay, now I see
Any
what you're."
examples of his or yours?
I mean, he was describing once. I mean, the first one that pops to mind is once he was describing why it was unfair to blame abolitionists for the Civil War, and he said, "Look, these slaveholders came aboard this national ship." He used the metaphor of a ship, having duly signed these articles with their eyes wide open, and they knew that they were getting on a ship with abolitionists who had free speech. And so we don't ever have to apologize for being abolitionists who have free speech. They knew that they were taking their chances against education and national enlightenment when they got on this ship. And so we don't have to apologize to these, I think he called them piratical mutineers, who are now trying to take over this national ship with a he had a good phrase. What was it? With a, it's almost like and it wasn't insolence, but it was like with an insolence belonging only to themselves or something. But I always just thought that was a great metaphor to describe what the Constitution is. Imagine us being a ship of
Hmm.
people who say, we believe that the people are going to constitute this government, and everybody who believes it gets on board. And if you
Yeah.
don't believe it, don't get on board. But you guys are slave owners, and you know that we already have abolitionists on this ship, you know, uh, and we have freedom of speech on this ship too. So when you're getting on board, you're going to have to take your chance against free speech, education, and enlightenment. I don't know. It's an
Yeah.
effective metaphor that I use all the time to
Yeah.
describe.
Well, I'm so glad I asked because that is meaningful. It was meaningful for me today to understand your point. So thank you, thank you. I want to take a quick side trip, and if we're not careful, this would be the whole show, and I don't want to do that. The
Yes,
quick
sir.
side trip is often almost on a daily basis. I talk to somebody live or type to somebody I know, or see some interesting story that I kind of glance through and read, and sometimes I read in depth. It happened to me this morning, and it was about the founding of our country. It was like a 5 minute video, and it was taking us through how evil America is, and how there's no way we can be a country worthy of adulation without reconciling our horrible past. And it went through the Indians, and it went through women, and it went through blacks, and it went through slaves. I mean, and it was just like in that what happened in this year and then this year, and clearly the founders didn't mean any of this because they were the only ones that could vote. It's white male landowners, and our country is not what we were pretend it is. And so we've talked about that over shows. But the reason I bring that up is I have real people in real life that talk like that on a regular basis. They live that. They practice that we're a bad country. And whether it's the war we're in now, or whether it's the elections that we're never sure if they're really accurate, or belief in institutions and they're mad, or the amount of rich people that are getting richer and poorer that are getting poorer. And so I live in this dual world, Professor, of having people I know, I love, I like, I admire, I respect, that voted for Trump, by example, and said some of those things that I think are negative. And then I have people like you that are positive and upbeat and inspiring, and what a great world, and go hug everybody. And I can actually see both, and I applaud both, or or at least I recognize both. Can you give, not necessarily me advice, but can you give the American people in our 250th year some advice on how to reconcile good, bad, and ugly, and how to work through it all?
Well, I guess I'd first want, if I was trying to talk to this person, I'd want to find out if they thought what they thought the human nature was like, and if they understood um, what human nature had been do what human beings had been doing to each other for all of human history, you know. And if they then got to the point where they understood, um, I would also want to know, like, are they capable of changing their minds when presented with facts? And then I would simply say, let's go to this website called Our World in Data. And let's look at whatever issue. I'll let you define whatever issue it is that you care about the most. And let's see what happens when American principles are applied to that issue. And for almost every issue, what you will see is that the application of American principles, they're not the thing that caused it, they are the thing that makes it better, or the thing that ended it. That, I mean, just getting people to understand that slavery existed. I mean, if and you again, you can use a metaphor and say, like, let's say that we come upon a house that is on fire. When the fireman rolls up and puts the fire out, do you blame the fireman for the water damage? Do you blame the thing that 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 ends the evil, or or do you say to yourself, thank you, fireman. the house was already on fire. And, applying water didn't lead to paradise, but it put the fire out. And once the fire is out, we can begin to repair the damage. So I would apply some version of that metaphor to someone who wants to blame the American system of government for evils that have existed among human beings for all of human history, and say, why would you not want, I mean, and again, look at our world in data and say, like, what is it you care about? You care about poor people? Because look, there are fewer poor people. What do you care about? People living a long time? Because look, people are living longer. What about uh, do you care about the environment? Do you care about domestic violence? Do you care? I mean, whatever the issue is, let's look at the actual data and see what's making it better. And then don't blame the thing that's helping. You know, it just seems like a completely backwards way of approaching these issues. And you know that if after you've had that discussion with someone, if they still resist, you know that it's not about logic, it's not about data, it's that they have some identity where hating America is part of who they are, and they don't want to give up that identity. And that all the facts and logic and arguments will never uh, change that person's mind in the moment. You would
You think
that would have to be a lifetime
is
journey.
there a philosophy behind that, or is it more a temperament?
Well, I think in many aspects of elite life and elite culture, the cheapest, fastest, easiest way to make to gain entrance is to be cynical and sarcastic and adopt the the sort of dominant view that America is bad. So if you want other people to think you're cool, right, and you don't want to actually read any books, just say you hate America and that we've killed a bunch of Indians and that sort of thing, and you can sort of stumble your way through, um, and other people will agree with you, and
So I
you get to keep your
discuss
job, you know.
so I discuss this with people regularly, and I'm kind of surprised by your answer. Everything that, whether it's Boy Scouts or soccer or good teachers in high school or fraternity in college or sporting teams, military. I'm trying to think of more. I mean, it seems like I want to follow somebody who's going to get us out of this mess, who's optimistic that we're not going to die on the hill. With the Patton thing, where it makes some other poor son of a bitch die for their
Yeah.
country. You know, if I want to follow a leader that will help me and help us and do something. So it's antithetical to my way of thinking. Business people are always just, that's all they do is they solve problems. They don't come into the Chamber of Commerce when I was running it. They go and say, I've got problems and I'm going out of business. They go, God, I have to overcome this and I have to figure out a way to do it, or I have to meet somebody that can help me. And it's all positive.
Yeah, but the incentives in um, elite institutions and places like media and education are not. It's not to solve problems. And politics, media, education. Uh,
Okay. So it
you
depends
are
on
rewarded for pretending to solve the problem
okay, fair
rather than
enough.
actually
I
solve the
think I
problem.
can understand that. So let me give one
Because
more
think
quick
about this:
analogy.
if you solve the problem, your job goes away.
Well, hooray! You can go find another job or field. Yeah. Okay. So, Professor, I am also in a different way, almost the flip side of this coin. I'm having extensive conversations with people that believe America is just like other countries, and whether that other country is Germany or Russia or Thailand and China, we're all the same. We're all countries. We're all looking after our own deal, and we need to provide for our citizens, and to the rich, or to the victor belongs the spoils kind of crowd. I think it's the flip side of the coin of the people that are down, and these people are actually pretty optimistic, and then think we're stronger, so we should take it while we can, kind of philosophy. And they really don't know if there's a difference between America and China or Russia, or and that confuses me as well. So can you take us through that real quick?
So
Do you,
can you maybe
is that
refine your question a little bit more? Because I could go in a lot of different directions.
well, is America different than most other countries, and if so, how?
Absolutely. At our best. And I'll say we're not this right now because we have a system where the president is the head of the government, but he's also our head of state. And so, in many ways, what and the president also has tremendous power when it comes to U.S. foreign policy. So we have to say that whatever President Trump put out on Truth Social this morning, that is the foreign policy of the United States as of today, right? As of whatever the last thing he said is. And so that means that, the United States is not currently upholding the principles of the United States. Uh,
It doesn't sound
and
like a shining city on a hill to me. What are those
Well,
principles?
I would just say that President Trump is someone who seems to believe that America is just like every other country, and that the only thing America should worry about is acquiring land, property, and resources. He's like he's an old mercantilist almost. He doesn't believe in
Get off the
doesn't believe that
personality,
the
if you
source
don't mind.
well, he
What are
doesn't
our
believe that the source of of American power. He's wrong about this. The source of American power is uh, our ideals. That's why every bit of our power, our wealth, our influence, all of the source of that is our ideals. But he doesn't believe that. So he thinks the source of our
well, Professor? I don't care about him.
yeah,
When you say ideals, um, I get back. Oh, other countries have ideals, and I go, well, our
right,
laws
but
don't allow.
ours are true.
What's that?
Ours are true. You know,
Say, well, so flush that out.
Well, if to paraphrase Calvin Coolidge, if all men are created equal, that is final. If human beings derive their rights from their creator, and the purpose of government is to secure those rights, that is final. The rule of the people as being the best way to achieve equality for all, that is final. And
So
you cannot make progress beyond those propositions.
love that Coolidge quote. Thank you. I get back, not when I give them the Coolidge quote, because I'm not as smart as you, but I give them, no, we are different. And they go, oh, that's not true. All people believe their country is great, and people are equal, and all people have a constitution, and all people have rules of law. And if they break them, they get punished. And they all have a democracy. They all get a vote. And it's rare that they don't. And so I get this just like this, and I have this huge cognitive dissonance. That are they living in the same world that I'm living in? They're not dumb people, they're smart people, and they're advocating to me that we're doing just a-okay, everything's great, John. And I go, well, yeah, but as long as we keep to our principles, as long as we follow our rules, and the rules, if the Constitution, they go, oh, other countries have Constitution, or the elections, of course they overrule that. And I go, yeah, but we also have states that are in this battle. It may not just be a failure of a presidency and Congress. Yeah, sure, the Supreme Court weighs in, but we have states that have a say in this, and further, we have people that can weigh in on this. I feel like I'm equal to the president or a congressperson. May not have that job. I'm equal to them though, and I'm going to talk about it if I want to. And that hits a cold stare. They're like going, "Why don't you just get on board the other ship?" To your analogy. And I
Yeah.
go, well, "I don't want to be on that ship. I want to be on the American ship." Does this relate to you at all? Do you have these
I mean,
conversations?
sure. Yeah. I talk to people who say this stuff all the time, but they're wrong. I, the and there are many other countries who have adopted American ideals since the founding of the United States. We are not alone anymore. But it is still true that because of the success of American ideals and institutions in America, um, we also allow a lot of smaller countries to um, exist under the umbrella of a world system that allows them to exist. And
Or otherwise they just get taken over by a stronger country?
Well, I don't know because to be honest, I think that there are some countries that are really showing that if America abandons our principles, I'll make some statements here, right?
Okay.
There's no natural reason why the United States should be more successful than any other slab of land on the globe. So the country that will be the most successful in the world 100 years from now is the country that most firmly adheres to our founding principles. And that doesn't have to be America. If you look at what has happened in Poland, if you look at what could happen in Ukraine, if you look at what could happen I mean, India's, who knows how they could go, but like, or any country in Africa, you know, Mexico, I, Mexico could be a world power 100 years from now if they adopt, and truly implement the ideals of the American founding. Um,
And you just really believe that human spirit, that entrepreneurial genius, that desire to do something better for yourself and community is just better than somebody telling you what to do.
No, no, no. It's more than that. And I'm glad you mentioned this because so often people talk about capitalism um, or the competition aspect of this. But what Lincoln said was liberty to all. That's the principle. So, and I like to think about it this way. If we're playing a game of football, football has rules. And if in order to know that you've won at the game of football, the rules had to have been applied. Liberty to all doesn't mean that I want freedom for me. Liberty to all means you honestly want the rules applied equally to all. That's the principle. It's when you understand that I can't win at this game until the rules apply to me also, that I don't get to cheat and they don't get to cheat. And then I will know that I have won. That's liberty to all. It's not greed. It's that you can't even have the achievement until the rules are applied equally. And that is what Lincoln said gives hope to all. That's the only thing that will give enterprise and industry to all. You won't bother to work. You won't bother to dream about a better life for yourself. You won't do any of those things until you know that the rules are going to be applied equally, not just to your opponent because you don't like them, but they're going to be applied to you too.
Yeah.
It's both. So, and it's not, you know, that's not greed. It's that you want, if we're boxers, like you want a fair fight. If you're running in a track meet, you want a fair race. It's the fair race that makes achievement possible.
Okay, Professor, that's really inspiring. So I'm going to hopefully take that cut quote out once it's recorded. That's inspiring to me. So sorry to give you a practical again.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we got to get to Katzem and then see if Jeff would like to add into the conversation. So a practical. I'm perplexed with gerrymandering. So I'm working on this. I've got a ballot initiative in Colorado to stop the Democrats. We have four Republicans, four Democrats, and they want to make it in Colorado where there would be seven Democrats and one Republican. I just think that's fundamentally unfair. And so I was interviewed on the radio station with a prominent conservative, actually a nationally prominent conservative. And he goes, John, I'm confused why you're involved in this. Aren't you against Trump? And I go, yeah, but I don't want to talk about Trump. But yes. He goes, well, why would you be helping to make sure Republicans have seats? And I go, well, because it's unfair. It's people out in the prairie and the mountains and down in El Paso, Colorado Springs. No, they're conservative. They want to vote for who they want to, which would be different than me. And they should have that right to vote for who they want to, even if it differs with me, even if it's going to make it harder for Congress to put a check and a balance on a president who I think is abusive to our system. And that kind of surprises him, but it doesn't surprise me at all. And so I know all my liberal friends are a little, not all, many of my liberal friends are concerned about what I'm doing on this. And many of my conservative friends are joy, John's on our side again. And I'm actually not on either side. I want to just have people give a chance to participate in our democracy. That's it. And that doesn't seem to resonate with people. Everybody seems to be in the power game these days. I don't get it. Why are we all in the power game if we are?
Well, you're right. And so I would say what you need is a better answer than an independent commission, because we have that in California and it is a complete falsehood. When they wanted to get rid of Republican districts, my city, a city of 140,000 people, was split into three congressional districts. Like, that is gerrymandering, and it was done by this so-called independent commission. My
So it's
neighbor,
work in Colorado. So that's interesting to note
no,
that it does work in
but
Colorado.
my point is that if you're saying that that this independent commission is going to be somehow the answer, I can just tell you from the California model of this, it has ended up being it in all cases. Um, it does you sort of have uh, partisans on one side appointed, partisans on the other side appointed, and then the so-called independent people. And the independent people are appointed by one political party or the other, and then it essentially means that the party on the outs is just outvoted every time, and you end
So,
up
Professor,
exactly with the same partisan map.
I believe you in California, but in Colorado, voters voted for this in 2018, so we've had it for 6 years or whatever. And we have four Republicans and four Democrats in a predominantly Democratic state now. So, gosh, four Republicans. So it clearly is actually worked on behalf of the Republican side in Colorado thus far. So,
Well,
what was your
all I can tell
alternative?
you is that think about this as an example, right? Uh, I have one. My sons go to high school on the other side of the street, and the college where I work is on this side of the street, and we all cross three congressional districts.
So I get it. That's crazy. But what's your alternative? What is your
My
going back?
alternative is that if you look at the actual principles of how at the actual instructions that were given to the in so-called independent commission, that if you just followed those instructions, you would end up with a much better result.
Hmm,
And this is something that you don't even need, that is essentially, you don't even need human beings to
yeah,
decide this thing.
yeah,
What the
yeah,
instructions say, that's a math equation.
yeah.
And you should just apply those principles to create the equation that would in fact create the result, which would say you don't get to split up a city of 140,000 people, and
Yeah.
you don't get to carve out one neighborhood and what you would find is that you would have, representative regions and it's funny because in the early days of I did this several times to demonstrate to people that AI would always generate essentially the identical an identical map. if you just fed it the instructions. But then at least the Google and the Microsoft AI stopped giving a result saying, we won't do this. You know,
Well,
there's
so Professor, you're talking about these districts before voters in California decided to put a hold on the redistricting commission. They just gerrymandered Republicans out, right?
well, no, but the gerrymandering of Republicans out was done by the independent commission.
Oh, so the citizens of California voted to.
We have an independent commission that is supposed to follow those rules, and what I'm telling you is they don't. They are partisan.
Are they following the mandate of the vote in California?
They are. They were all voted. Well, they were appointed by people who were voted into office, and the laws that they're supposed to follow was voted in, and the law enforcement was voted into office.
Hmm.
But here's what happens: this commission is partisan anyway, and it just ends up being a democratic gerrymandered map.
Well, but Professor, I'm still confused. Sorry not to know the details of California, but that was what President Bush did in Texas, and then California went, well, if Texas is doing that, we're going to change, we're going to vote differently and get rid of, I think, 6 seats, 6 Republicans in California because we can. I mean, that was, and then citizens went, yay, let's do that. I mean, that
But
was the
I'm telling you that
desires to be.
I'm telling you that even before we got the more gerrymandered map, it was
Okay.
already
All right.
gerrymandered. That
Okay.
that's why the map didn't change really that much in California. It was just a more gerrymandered map.
Okay, I think I'm following you. Let's switch gears and then get to Jeff, and then I got to go in 10 minutes or so. Um, uh, Derek Katzum, Professor Katzum, what a nice compliment. I think it was Twain that said imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and he didn't imitate us. He just liked our show with him a while ago, where we asked either you or me or us asked him a question that he's been contemplating for 6 months or a year. So yeah, that's which is what a great compliment to us that you have a smart professor thinking through our show. And he wrote a whole blog on how dangerous of a situation we're in. And he wanted to give Americans a slightly different perspective because a lot of people, as we've been talking about, the earth is shattering, we're all dying, or everything's perfect. And he tried to give away it was a metaphor, the pain threshold
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the doctor's office. Did you have a chance to read that yet?
Yeah, I read it this morning. Yeah.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad we both. I think I read it yesterday, but it was insightful. I thought it was really neat that he kind of break down where we are, and I think he gave us a 6 out of 10 on the pain
Yeah,
threat.
it's funny because I would come up with a different scale than him. So
Uh-huh.
don't think that when I like it, it means that I agree with everything that's in it, but I like it as an exercise. But it's funny. I actually would say we're worse than I'm more pessimistic than him,
Yeah,
yeah, which I wouldn't have thought. But
yeah.
I
I
don't
kind of
necessarily
thought the
agree with
same
him.
reaction. I would go a 7 or 8 on his scale. He put us, but nuclear holocaust and all
Yeah,
those are
yeah, yeah.
10. So I get it can't be a 10 or a 9, but I put us as a 7 or 8 in the interim in a snapshot in time. Oh, long picture, maybe it's not that severe, but in a snapshot, we're in a serious situation.
Well, I would say if you read that article, that speech by Clarence Thomas,
Okay.
um, you you might understand why I'm a little higher on the
We'll give us
Katz pain scale.
we'll give a snapshot of just an indication. You can change your mind later. Why are you higher?
I'm worried that we've lost our way.
Mm.
That too many that um, that the lack of literacy, citizenship, and good history education is is eating away at our culture. I mean, that principle, that thing I just mentioned about liberty to all, it's something that it is difficult to understand enough to understand that you need to learn it, keep learning it, teaching it, seeing how it was applied over time, you know, and those ideas needed to be connected to events, real world events in the study of the past. And that is something that should be done throughout the educational experience of every single American from kindergarten through their sophomore year of college, you know, um, and it just isn't. It just is not there. And it's not there in a way that it was. It's funny. Like I was once reading in a it's very strange. I was trying to find the origin of the prayer, "Now I lay me down to sleep," you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I stumbled across a bunch of pre-revolutionary American school books. And one of the things that I found in there is that we were teaching children this stuff, the idea of liberty to all. You know, we were teaching it to school children before the American Revolution, and we don't do it now. Like, it seems so completely absurd, just the total lack of correct civic education.
Okay, so Professor, a metaphor, and then see if Jeff has a question or comment. The metaphor, the American ship. We got a
Yeah.
big ship. We're one of the largest countries in the world. It's a not the, but there's a couple that are much larger, but we're a big country. We've got this enormous ship. Is the Declaration or the Pledge of Allegiance, liberty and justice for all, are those principles the rudder, or are they the sail, or are they the engine room? Are they the whole? What is the
I'm going to
metaphor?
steal Abraham Lincoln's metaphor
Okay,
that the Declaration of Independence is the word fitly spoken. It is the apple of gold. It is the valuable insight given to us by God, a truth that needs to be um, preserved and protected and defended. And the Constitution and Union, the existence of the United States, and our system of laws, those are the display case or the frame of silver. And as Lincoln said, we must act so that none of these things are blurred, bruised, or broken. We have to protect the Declaration, we have to protect the Constitution, and we have to protect the United States. That is our duty. But the thing that entwines itself about the human heart, those are the principles of the Declaration. They are necessary, but none of these things on their own are sufficient. We have to have the Declaration. We have to have the Constitution. We have to have the United States. We need we None of these things on their own are sufficient, but all of them are necessary.
excellent. And is that all Lincoln, or did you put some
That's all
cool?
Lincoln. That's Lincoln's fragment on Constitution and Union, the
Okay,
apple of gold. Yeah,
all
it's
right.
very famous.
That's the metaphor that we should all drill into our
That's
heads and think through and
everybody.
practice.
The textbook that I use in my classes is Land of Hope, and that title is taken from this fragment on Constitution and Union, that the United States is the land of hope, and that this combination of the principles of the Declaration, the existence of the United States, and the Constitution of the United States, those are the only things that will ever give human beings hope.
Well, so Professor, you'd appreciate again. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I wasn't as eloquent as you were but 2 days ago we had a meeting of about 37 of us, lawyers and public policy people, business people, and community leaders, all in the same room together live. My why of why we were gathered with the Rule of Law Task Force of the Colorado Bar Association and an organization I founded recently, American Business Leaders Protecting Our Constitutional Republic. The reason the two groups got together is the apple of gold. And I gave the apple of gold in the same frame of silver in our declaration. Wasn't as articulate, but I'm trying. Professor, I appreciate your time today. Let's see what we've missed with Jeff Dugdale. If you're still on, this is the time to critique, add, compliment, criticize, add your own nuances, whatever you'd like to do, Jeff, in 10 minutes or less. First, you got to take yourself off mute. I'm sure it was eloquent, but we couldn't hear it.
Yeah, that better?
Yes.
All right. I'll do several of those, but first I'll do a compliment. I have continually been professors to
Hold on, Jeff. Is your speaker down, Professor Tootle? Can you hear him well, or?
Can't hear him very well.
Yeah, you're very quiet for some reason, Jeff, and I don't know if it's your computer or.
It's almost like something's in front of your microphone or something.
There we
Yeah.
go. Is that
Yeah.
Much
better?
better.
Yeah,
Much
but
better.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm continually amazed at the professor's ability to pull a quote, an extensive quote out of multiple books, and the things he remembers that people have said, and just it's all right there in the front of his mind. And
Yeah, agreed.
I can't do any of that, so I did want to give that compliment. I have a kind of on an hour of conversation, I have a quick macro and micro comment. The micro is on the gerrymandering. One of a couple things is true. Either we want to do nothing but gerrymandering and let everybody have at it as much as possible for every state so that it's an even playing field, so that everybody's following the rules, or we want to have the rules apply to everybody. So in that case, John, your efforts are admirable, but they're applied to the wrong place. You shouldn't be working in Colorado. You should be working on Congress. And that's if we're going to have a set of rules for everybody. If we don't have that set of rules and everybody's allowed to gerrymander as much as possible, what we're going to end up with is sorting. That's what we're seeing now. We're not getting more divided. We're just dividing ourselves. We're putting ourselves into places with people like us, and that's not going to end up good for us. That diminishes the ability to have a diversity of thought. So I hope that I'm not a big fan of regulation of things, but in this case, I think Congress needs to act, not.
Can I have a quick retort to your micro?
Sure.
I disagree. I think there's an opportunity under federalism in our U.S. Constitution that elections are a matter, time, place, and manner of the states, and states should be different. Laboratories of democracy, 50 different ways of looking at it. And every state is becoming mad, crazy, insane, mad, anger, emotional mad. And I want there to be one bright light, Colorado, where it's someday they can keep going back and going, oh, Colorado treats its citizens, their own citizens, fairly. That's the way we should actually do that. We don't need to use this power politics trying to disenfranchise the minority. Even if every other state's doing it, we should have one state doing it right, and I want it to be mine. I encourage it to be yours as well, but you've got to decide that under our system of government. Did I compel you to my way of thinking? Did I inspire you?
It's a wishful thought, and it might be true, but a lot of people will suffer for a lot of time before that happens.
Yeah, I think we can win regardless of that. But I got your point, and I've made my point. Now, what's your macro?
So the macro is back kind of to the beginning conversation about why do you have people that are pessimistic about America and criticizing our past? And why don't they get in line? Why aren't they like you, following your leaders? The aspirational leader that gives a vision and gets everybody to join them. And I guess what I propose is that we need both. We need those people that no matter how good things get, they're constantly saying we can do better. So, Professor Tootle said, if you show them the facts and they don't come around to your way of thinking, then they've got some other motive, or they're just America haters. I think that's true in some cases, but I think we also need people who are like, I'm unsatisfied by that. We can do better. We haven't cured racism. Sure, we're way better than we have been, but we're not done. We never will be done. So I'm going to keep pushing for us to be better. And we need the people who are like, we've done great. Let's be proud of what we've done.
Excellent. So you're arguing for both. Professor, reaction to his micro or macro or both?
On his micro, I think I kind of split the difference between the two of you. I agree with Jeff that this is something that will lead to it's going to take a while. But I do think that the Supreme Court has thus far taken the right approach, which is that basically this is a political thing that needs to be handed over to the states, and they
Over to
only
Congress.
yeah, and they only step in if there is uh, a clear deprivation of rights. If Congress were to step in, they would probably defer to Congress. But I agree with John that this is something that would be, I think, better left to states. And, you know, even though democracy will be frustrating in the long run, that's why we have to have better systems of public education to teach people that, yeah, we are going to get some bad results,
Yeah.
uh, but the hopefully the Supreme Court will prevent um, any individual citizen of actually being deprived of their civil rights. But we need to allow states to come up with their own systems of voting. Now, as in
Jeff,
terms,
I liked your coffee mug, no whining. Do you accept Professor Tootle's remark of the fighting for federalism, a belief in our system, or do you want to give a retort back?
I'm a big believer in federalism. In this case, I think it's resulting in sorting. And at some point, sorting turns into civil war. So I don't think
You
that's a
mean
good thing in the
sorting,
very long run.
sorting to balkanization to
yeah, yeah,
violence.
it's something I worry about. But you know, the funny thing is that um, it the sorting uh, is something that I mean, it's funny to think about this because I'm from California, but California is not a prison, and people are leaving, and it means that people are voting with their feet that they don't want to live under this particular form of government, and we saw this happen in a way with sort of the unions and the industrial North that if you implement something that is such a bad system, eventually the car manufacturers leave. They moved to Indiana, they moved to Ohio, they moved to Tennessee and North Carolina, right? So I I do think that the fact that we do have a federal system and that our citizens can move from state to state pretty well, not pretty freely, completely freely, um, does tend to have these long-term effects of sorting these things out because now, Tennessee is a growing powerhouse, Florida is a growing powerhouse, Texas is a growing powerhouse, the Carolinas are growing, that places that are not doing these things, um, the consequences are falling on them. So,
Okay, I got you, Professor. Last call on that, Jeff. Are you good with that in the micro?
just in the
I,
sorting.
I think that just results in everybody living in a state thinking the same way. And so you lose the benefit of the diversity of thought.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it would be interesting. I would need more experience in places like Florida, to be honest. I
And
is that what's happening in places like Florida and Texas?
yeah, but let me go back to one other really wise thing you pointed out, which is that
Quickly and then macro.
people aren't just one thing that they said or thought. And so, and we're going to see that in the gerrymandering. I mean, the Texas districts that all were gerrymandered may end up voting against Trump's initiatives because he
Yeah,
misunderstood that they're not one thing and always that. So
right. I
we'll
mean, this
see.
is also something that happens, is
People change.
true gerrymandering is that people try to micromanage these districts and then they don't always end up cooperating the way that
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
supposed
Cool.
to. Uh,
Macro.
um, Gosh, I've forgotten what the macro was. But I should have.
And we need both. Well, we need people who are malcontents, just
Oh
like
yeah,
people who are satisfied with what we've done and applauding our successes.
yeah, I think so. I would agree with that. I always say I like a diverse Supreme Court. That when I think about the personalities on the Supreme Court, just because it's small enough to get a handle on, you think about. I wouldn't. There isn't a single justice on the Supreme Court that I would want two of. that I think we benefit now. And I always say I'm not a libertarian, but I always want one libertarian in the
Yeah,
room with me.
that came to mind as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because the libertarian will always point out the argument that we're not thinking of, that and I'm not again, I wouldn't say that means that I want libertarians to be, my lord and master and be able to implement their laws from on high. But I certainly want a couple of them in the room. I want them telling me where I'm wrong, and making the other guy, defend his position too. Uh,
I,
So
I'm gonna think long and hard about your Supreme. My first came to mind, I think there is one justice that I'd want multiple of, but I'm
oh,
not gonna
really?
say who it is.
Oh, okay.
But I'm
Yeah,
gonna think
I mean,
long and hard about that.
yeah, I really like, um, kind of three of them, that I'm pretty sympathetic to. Um, but, and
one of them
there's
is
maybe
Gorsuch and the
one.
other's Roberts. Um,
Yeah, but I'm like, maybe, but that's the point is you want one person who you really disagree with to at least make the case, because
Interestingly,
it makes the other eight make their case, you know.
yeah,
Um,
interestingly enough, gentlemen, that we're going to end on this. I was with Sarah Isgar and David
yeah,
French live this week. She's promoting her new book, and I'm not sure her answer. I haven't read it yet, but maybe you've read it, Professor. I'm not sure the last branch standing is the judiciary. I actually think it's federalism and the people that will save America, not the judiciary. But you're going to go get your copy of it?
I was going to show you that I have it too,
Yeah.
and
While while he's traveling, can I suggest if you haven't already read it, The Shadow Docket? I don't remember who the author is, but I just finished that, and it's there's his book. Yeah, that's well worth reading.
yeah, and
Nice.
I got the last Arthur Brooks too, the meaning of your life.
Nice. That's a worthwhile one. Boy, you have a lot of books there, Professor. So the interesting question that was posed to David at this live event from a college kid was, what kind of justice would you want? And the answer back was, I want a personality justice, an educator, or somebody who likes people, somebody who's willing to go to give speeches and have people understand the court. We need an ambassador for the court, is what they said. And I thought that was a really interesting comment, at least from David, especially from David French, that
Yeah.
it's that the institution should be defended, and it should be done so with a person who's willing to go to the people and shake hands.
Well, the funny thing is I've always thought of Clarence Thomas as being that guy. Clarence Thomas it has a great sense of humor, and he's a great speaker. And his lifestyle is more like the average American than any other justice. I mean, he is a fanatic for Nebraska sports, and he travels in an RV across the United States every year, just staying in RV parks with regular people who have no idea that he's a Supreme Court justice. So,
Okay, but he is in a RV that's $250,000.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Well,
not
it's
really
for a lot
regular
of people.
Joe.
I don't
I
know.
bet it's more than a quarter million.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, have you been to an RV park lately? That is. I mean, there's some nice ones out there.
No, I bet it's $1 million, Jeff. You got to look at your RVs. Did we conclude satisfactorily today, or is there something biting that we should finish in 1 minute or less?
Um, no, I think it's a good. I mean, I didn't mention my favorite Daniel Patrick Moynihan quotation, but it essentially makes Jeff's point is that the last thing Daniel Patrick Moynihan wrote before he died, it's included in his edited writings, is that um, the one thing he's learned about public life is that um, we need we need each other. Um, that he says the central um, conservative truth is that the measure of a civilization is its culture. And I've always described this to my students as meaning that if you want to know if you live in a good country or a bad country, walk around, see how people live. Ronald Reagan used to say that his dream was to take one of the Soviet leaders up in a helicopter and have him just point at a house. And he said, we'll go to that house and we'll see how they live, you know. So the measure of a civilization is its culture. And he says the central liberal truth is that politics can save a culture, that you can use politics to make culture better. But everybody always stops there with their quote. The final thing he says. So if you Google like Daniel Patrick Moynihan, whatever, and look for this quote on Goodreads or whatever quote website, they always cut out the last part. And the last part, I think, is Jeff's point. He says, but the thing that I've learned is that we need both. We need someone making the argument that the measure of a civilization is actually its culture. And we also need people out there making the argument for how politics can improve culture. And that is what has benefited the United States, is that ongoing debate.
Lovely. Well, I didn't know Jeff would get the last word. You usually get the last word, but well done, Professor. Jeff, thank you for your time today. And Professor, sure nice to see you. Glad to be back with you and hope to see you as early as next Friday.
Yeah, sorry for my lingering cough, but
you look good.
That,
I'm just glad you're healthy again. Professor, thanks. Have a great day. Well done.